Well, hello, all of my students. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Jay, and welcome to another English lesson here on the channel where I have the opportunity to help you with your English vocabulary, comprehension, and your English fluency. And if you're new to the channel, I primarily accomplish that by English through stories. I believe that reading is a great way to help you to improve your English, and I have compiled a number of engaging, fun, and informative stories to help you on your English journey. Now, on today's story, I know you're going to enjoy it. Make sure you hang around. I'm going to read and repeat today's story. And I must say, it's actually shorter than the last episode, but I know you're going to enjoy it. I'll have quiz questions at the end. You can read along with me down in the comments section. And to further help your English, be sure to check out my English podcast. That link is in the description, and study some of my playlists. I have hundreds of lessons here on the channel that I know will help you to improve. So if you're ready for a little bit of learning and a little bit of laughter, let's get ready to dive into today's lesson. George and his cousin Eric were never particularly close, but they got along well enough. Let's read and repeat. George and his cousin Eric were never particularly close, but they got along well enough. So do you have anyone like that in your life to where you're not particularly close, meaning you're not the best of friends, but you talk, you communicate, you interact? And here you have George and Eric, who are relatives. They are cousins. And sometimes you're close to some family members, but some family members you aren't that close to. And notice here in this sentence, it says they got along well enough. So, that simply means that they may not have done everything together, but if they needed to communicate or accomplish something, they got along just enough to get that particular task done. Let's continue. However, one day Eric asked George for a ride to work. Compound word, however. So despite them not getting along very well, they still did some things together. And sometimes you have to do that. You have to look beyond little petty issues and differences and still learn to get along so you can accomplish a goal or you can help someone else accomplish a goal. Okay. So when Eric asked George for a ride to work, I need a ride to work. He's asking him to transport him or take him to work. Okay. I don't want to ride the bus. Can you come and pick me up in your car? You might say. Okay. George, feeling annoyed, decided to give Eric the cold shoulder and refuse. He decided to give Eric the cold shoulder and refuse. So first of all, let's talk about this. When you are annoyed with someone, okay, annoyed, it says that they're getting on your nerves. Or we might say a person is making you sick. Okay, they're to the point to where they're bothersome. They're a nuisance, as we might say. So notice George gave Eric the cold shoulder. So in other words, to give someone a cold shoulder, it says that you're going to ignore them or be a little bit unfriendly. Okay, so notice what happens in the story. Okay, we're going to talk about being impolite. And so here you have George giving Eric a phrase you can use, the cold shoulder. So you might say in a sentence, after the argument, she gave her husband the cold shoulder. Okay, I wouldn't let you borrow $500. And so from that moment, you started giving me a cold shoulder. To make matters worse, Eric made a snide comment about George's car, implying that it looked poor and broken down. Boy, so look at this. That's very rude. So you don't have a car. You ask me for a ride to work, and then you make a snide comment that my car is not good enough for you. Oh, it might have been a fight. What would you do, or how would you react if someone asked you for a ride to work and then they said your car was just old, poor looking, and broken down? Would you want to fight? Would you want to cut them? Now notice, this is a new word you can practice using, a snide comment. Okay, snide. So when you make a snide comment, a very smart, mean, or rude comment to someone or about them. Okay. Oh, those would be fighting words for me. This made George even more upset, and he froze Eric out for the rest of the day. Let's read and repeat. This made George even more upset, and he froze Eric out for the rest of the day. So when you freeze someone out, that's another way of saying you're going to ignore someone. Okay. So for instance, you might say the group began to freeze me out because I didn't come to the last 4 meetings. Okay, so when you freeze someone out, you give them the cold shoulder, you ignore them. Okay, so George is pretty upset here. and it's very, very understandable. Now, let me go back. Let's read and repeat the sentence before. Let's read and repeat. To make matters worse, Eric made a snide comment about George's car, implying that it looked poor and broken down. So what does a poor and broken down car look like? Is it dirty? Is it old? Is it rusty? Thankfully, I don't think I've had a poor and broken down car before. I've had maybe an out of date car, but I always tried to keep what I had clean, trying to show gratitude. I believe if you're faithful over a little, you'll be faithful over much. But in your opinion, what does a poor and broken down car look like? Let me know down in the comments section. Okay, let's continue. Despite their disagreement, George knew he should have brushed off Eric's insult and been more polite. Let's read and repeat. Despite their disagreement. So despite means regardless of. Despite or regardless of their disagreement. Disagreement being a quarrel, a argument. You're not seeing, as we would say, eye to eye. I'm not seeing eye to eye with you. Okay, we disagree. Okay, you said red is the best. I said blue is the best. Okay, let's read and repeat. George knew he should have brushed off Eric's insult and been more polite. So to brush off, now you can use this to talk. I'm brushing the hair off of my shirt, or I'm brushing the dirt off of my head. But to brush off is somewhat like brushing off, but it means to remove, or again, to ignore. And there are some people you just have to brush off in life. They are impolite, they're rude, and they might be crazy. So you just have to learn how to just brush that off and keep moving forward. Okay. Sometimes people say hurtful things on purpose. Sometimes people say hurtful things and they didn't realize they were being offensive. But a sign of maturity is brushing it off. You have to just brush it off. Now, notice Eric insulted George. Okay, to insult means to talk negatively about. Remember, Eric called George's car broken down and poor, and get it, he didn't even have a car. What an insult. You know, online we call people that insult trolls. They like to come on your page and talk negative or say mean or rude things. They insult you, and you have to learn how to brush people off online that are trolls. You know, it's just a part of life. I just read a story. I'm going to say this before we go to the next sentence. Oh, it was so sad. I saw it on online on Twitter, I believe it is, or they call it X now. But there's this 10-year-old kid who is trending because he was being insulted so much at school, 10 years old, because of his glasses and his teeth. You know, when you're 10 years old, your teeth and your glasses, well, your teeth and your body is developing. And so sometimes you look a little obscure when you're young. And man, as kids, we can be rude. We can be mean. And let me see if I can find this, because you may want to look it up. It was really, really sad, but he ended up taking his life because of the insults that he had been facing. And so I can't find it, but it was trending this morning, a kid 10 years old. And so sometimes you just have in life people that are really, really rude. And one thing we have to learn how to do is how to brush them off. We're almost done. He realized that being impolite only led to hurt feelings and strained relationships. Isn't that the truth? When you're rude or mean, it can lead to hurt feelings and strained relationships. Now, let me say this. Sometimes being rude, you need to be rude. That's just my opinion, because you need to get a point across, okay? Or you need to teach someone something. But to just be rude or impolite for no reason at all, that's just childish, in my opinion. But let's read and repeat. He realized that being impolite only led to hurt feelings and strained relationships. So a strained relationship, a stressful, relationship, a tough relationship. Have you ever seen someone that you're like, oh gosh, here they come? That relationship is strained, it's stressful, It's not productive, all right? So let's read through today's short story at a faster pace, Let's see if you can keep up at my pace and still comprehend and communicate the words in the story. Now you can read along on the screen, and I have been told sometimes the print can be too small. So if you can't see it, you can follow along. The story is down in the description. Okay, let's read along without stopping. George and his cousin Eric were never particularly close, but they got along well enough. However, one day, Eric asked George for a ride to work. George, feeling annoyed, decided to give Eric the cold shoulder and refused. To make matters worse, Eric made a snide comment about George's car, implying that it looked poor and broken down. This made George even more upset, and he froze Eric out for the rest of the day. Despite their disagreement, George knew he should have brushed off Eric's insult and been more polite. He realized that being impolite only led to hurt feelings and strained relationships. Excellent. Let me give my hooray stance that I normally do here on the channel. Okay, so I try to put a lesson in my stories. I try to make them humorous because that's my personality. But I think the lesson in today's story for me is that, look, don't be unnecessarily rude to folk. I mean, it just puts a damper on your life and other people's life. What would you say is a lesson from today's story? This is not going to be one of the quiz questions, but what would you say a lesson in this story is about Eric and George? And someone may say some family members are a trip. Some family members are hard to work with. All right. Question number 1. What is a cold shoulder? Question number 2. What does snide mean? And question number 3 is a personal question. Is it difficult for you to brush off certain things? Is it difficult for you to brush off certain things? Even if it comes from certain people. Some people say, no, it's not hard for me to brush it off, but if it was someone close to me, then it's hard. Let me know. And if you say, yes, it's easy for me to brush things off, help me out. How do you brush things off so easily when someone insults you, annoys you, or you have a strained relationship? What is your mindset? Let's see if you can communicate those 3 questions down in the comments section, okay? Well, that's going to do it for today's lesson. I did a read and repeat lesson about George and Eric, and we learned about being impolite, rude, and how to handle that in today's lesson. Well, as always, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have enjoyed today's lesson. As always, I say, if you have enjoyed today's lesson, learned from the content, please be sure to share it with someone that is trying to improve their English. And I really hope you have enjoyed the lesson. Until my next lesson, be sure to study some of the playlists down in the description and check out the podcast. I'll be doing another episode this weekend, And if you're not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification so you can be notified. Until next time, thanks for hanging out. Hello to all of my new subscribers. I'll be talking to you and reading some comments on my podcast. Oh, wow. Got some new subscribers that have left some messages, and so we'll talk about that later this weekend. Okay? I'll see you then, and enjoy your day. Hope to talk soon. Bye-bye.